I think we're ready, Steve, for Alex.
You're good. Whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'd like to call the Pelham Board of Education meeting of August 31st, 2020 back to order. It's a special meeting on the reopening of schools. Would everybody please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. So would you mind giving us a reiteration of the executive session motions?
Sure. The board met in executive session to discuss the employment of a particular person.
Thank you so much. So now this brings us to our discussion of the reopening of schools. I'd like to turn everything over to Dr. Champ and all of our administrators to touch on a few items related to the reopening of school and give us a chance to discuss them. Thank you.
Thank you. Really appreciate the opportunity to give you an update on our reopening plans as we get closer. We're actually scheduled for teachers to come in for our first superintendent's conference day on Wednesday. So we're really excited about that and wanted to give you an overview of where we are with readiness and preparation. And also just to make you aware of a number of variables that are still out there. I think it's really important that the board understand, the community understand that there's every day is going to be a new day and a new challenge. And, we're trying to really plan forward because we know how important it is to the community that we get our children back to school and back in to the classrooms and to connect with their teachers and connect with each other. So we're really driving hard to make that happen. At this point, certainly given the outcome of this meeting, our hope and intention is to open schools in a hybrid model. I think folks have mostly figured that out, but we would like to make it official, assuming this conversation tonight is satisfactory to the board about the direction that we're going. So what we want to do is really just kind of highlight a number of different areas, which things, are in place, which things maybe are in process, where we may be running into supply chain issues or potential risks that are in front of us. And highlight those and then have a conversation just to see what questions the board may still have and concerns as we prepare to open schools. And again, I know so much of this, the best laid plans and the best intentions many times work out, but not always. So I think it's important for us to remember we're doing our best to plan and to try to solve for as many problems and variables and ahead of time as possible. But the reality is we know that we're going to have to remain flexible. We're going to have to adapt. We're going to have to problem solve. And things could change very quickly overnight. I think the reality is when you look at whether it's the disease itself, the virus itself, whether it's heat issues, whether it's staffing issues, whether it's contact tracing, there's so many different variables that could impact what each given day of the school year looks like. And it's frustrating. It's difficult for all of us because that's going to mean some very quick changes. But again, the best laid plans, we've got a strong team that's committed to making this happen. We've got an amazing group of educators and staff that are ready to come back and that want to be there for our students. So we're thankful for them and all the work they've done. And I just want to kind of run through some things tonight. So with that, I'm actually going to ask Jim if you might start us off with just the facility sides of things. I think we've got a lot that has really gone into place thanks to the health, safety, and logistics team, work with the building principals that have helped us to get ready to reopen. So Jim, why don't you kick things off for us, if you would, please?
Of course. Thank you and good evening. And just to echo what Dr. Champ said, a lot of participation from our administrative team over the summer, and certainly going through all of what we need to do to get our schools ready. Kind of have a list of many things that we've gone through here in order to get ready for the upcoming year. So I'll just kind of go down that list, and I'm certainly happy to answer questions as we move forward. We've gotten into our bathrooms and we've installed touchless faucets in our bathrooms throughout our buildings. We've installed plexiglass barriers, fixed plexiglass barriers in many areas throughout the schools, as many of the areas that have been requested by our staff. At the current time, where we may have interaction with the public or where we think there's a risk or a need, we're going to be positioned to install additional barriers as needed. So we have supplies for that as well. We've ordered face shields in sufficient quantities for our staff members. They've been distributed to our schools. Our water fountains, we have capped all of the water fountains in our schools so that the spout doesn't work except in our middle school. And what we want to do is that spout is capped, and we have installed cups. We'll have cups at those fountains, and also so students and staff can use water bottles and the bottle filler option on the water fountains. Middle school doesn't have water filling option on their water fountains. We do have cups at that location throughout the middle school. Working with Mr. Sabalos, we had a planned wireless upgrade, which we were able to communicate throughout the buildings district-wide. So throughout the district, our wireless has been upgraded, and the capacity throughout the district has been expanded. So we find ourselves in a very good position with our internal wireless system. We've also worked with Mr. Sabalos in technology with making sure that we procured sufficient webcams or document cameras that our instructors can use throughout the schools. We've purchased thermometers, touch-free thermometers in significant supplies. We have at least 2 at every school right now. We'll be pushing out probably 2 to 3 more or as needed so that we can check temperatures as people come into our buildings, students and staff in the morning if they need us to check them. We also we have purchased a significant quantities of wipes, antibacterial wipes, kind of like what you would think of as the Clorox wipes. Although they're not Clorox wipes, but they are antibacterial. We found ourselves in a very interesting situation where we had to buy the containers, the insert, and the solution, and we're in the process, or actually we're not in the process, we put them all together, and we have already distributed them to all of the classrooms. So all classrooms are outfitted with them, and we have ordered refills so that when our staff and students have used those antibacterial wipes, we're able to resupply them rapidly. Same time, all the classrooms have sanitizing wipe, what you would call Purell. In the middle school, high school, larger containers, and in the elementary school, much smaller, what you would kind of the sizes that we would have in our own houses, where the adults can help the students sanitize their hands. Just on Friday, through the generous donation through the civics, we received over 13,000 masks, face masks, surgical style paper masks. Again, a very, very generous donation. So those have been received, and based on our calculations, we've kind of assumed that can supply about 20% of our student and staff occupants of our buildings for up to 40 days. Again, really what we're doing is we are the issue of mask of last resorts. People need to have a mask when they come into our building. We're encouraging all folks to bring their own cloth mask or paper mask. However, if they don't have one, we will provide them with them, and these are the ones that we've received from the civics. Again, very generous. We also have more specialized masks, KN95 masks, 2 different types that we're distributing through the pupil personnel group, and that's Julia Chung's group. That some of them have a translucent center area, so the people watching someone speak can actually see the person's mouth. This will be for some of the special teachers and teachers of the younger grades. Julia, what grades were those for?
It'll be for kindergarten, first grade, ENL teachers, world language teachers, special education teachers,
Thank you.
and interventionists.
So we've ordered those. We've also ordered regular KN95 masks for some of those very same teachers, I believe, that will be in closer contact with students. We also have ordered a limited supply of our N95 masks for distribution to our nurses. And really, those are really specifically just for our nursing staff, our healthcare staff, based on our guidance that we've received. We've ordered a significant quantity of gloves, which have been pushed out to our schools. We have orange cones so that people can, again, the schools have the ability to place those outside the building, inside the building, as they need, so we can hopefully space people the right way in 6-foot intervals. We've put up significant signage throughout many of our buildings, and we continue to put up that signage, reminding people to wear masks, maintain social distancing, wash their hands. Those are the three biggies. And we also have arrows, up and down arrows, installed or stickered on the walls of the middle school and high school. The elementary schools, they don't necessarily have that need, so we haven't had a request for the arrows at the elementary schools, but those have also been put up. We are looking to hire, and we are continuing to hire monitors. As we mentioned at the last board meeting, we brought on 3 monitors. We interviewed 2 people on Friday who we will be looking to bring on, and we're looking to finish up our staffing. At the same time, we are losing some of our staff due to resignation, and some are moving forward. Some are choosing not to come back for either health-related reasons or other opportunities. So as we bring some on, we are still losing some, and we're moving forward to make sure we're able to identify and fill all of those needs for the first day of school. The facilities department received the hydrostatic sanitizers that we've talked about. It looks like we're going to try to order a couple more as well, and they are distributed and in use in the buildings. We find ourselves back ordered with the BioShield product that we've talked about, that provides that kind of protects the surface for 90 days from bacteria. It's a product that's very much in demand everywhere. We are, in addition to looking with the regular suppliers, we're looking with all of our other suppliers. To no surprise, again, they're having a lot of difficulty in supplying it as well. But we'll continue to look for it. At the same time, again, this was kind of a belt and suspenders approach with use of the BioShield. When we receive it, we will certainly spray it throughout those touch surfaces. But in the meantime, our regular cleaning and sanitizing will take place on a daily basis. We talked about butcher paper to put on, or paper to put on, not butcher paper. We talked about paper to put on desks in between. So for when students came into class in the middle school, the secondary school, and the high school, we've received a significant quantity of that paper. What it is it's butcher paper. If you think about it, it's kind of in pre-cut sizes. We've distributed as what we have to our middle schools, and we've also distributed 1 box to each of our elementary schools, again, for some of our specialized teachers to be able to use. They come in about 1,000 sheets in a box. So we think that's sufficient quantity for the elementary schools to start with. And we're waiting for the rest of our order to arrive for the rest of the high school. Working with BOCES and transportation, we are a walking district, but we do have transportation. For those buses where we have a minibus and we can't maintain social distancing, we've told BOCES that we're going to need a larger bus. And again, we're trying to get the final count on what that will be. And that number is kind of in flux right now, just because they're putting the final transportation plan together for the year. And we also work with other school districts. So we have to make sure what the counts are for each of the specific schools. For our Pelham resident students that receive public transportation passes from us, we're offering a mask for those children as well, at least 1 mask per week for those students when they ride on public transit. This summer, we also had quite a bit of work going on. Our smart bond cameras and infrastructure were installed, so we'll hear a little bit more about that as the year goes on. But that surveillance infrastructure is in place. As our custodians go through the buildings every year, it's really going to be three main things that they need to do. They're going to have to sweep, clean, and sanitize, and that's going to be that's really the genesis, or not the genesis, the heart of what they're going to be doing day in and day out. So it sounds pretty simple, and there are 3 easy steps. It's just keeping ahead of all of that. When you think of our cafeteria, where they normally, our students normally eat at one large table, now we have desks dispersed throughout that cafeteria, all 6 feet apart. Cleaning that and sweeping that and cleaning that is a lot more difficult when you can't just pick up a table and roll it to another location. Now we have, say, in a cafeteria area, you've got 50 or 60, up to 50 or 60 desks that you now need to move around. We've ordered paper gowns, personal protective equipment. So for people that need that, for nurses, or again, for any staff that are working in close proximity with students. Goggles, not like this, ones that don't help you read, but are certainly protective. And then at the one of the recommendations was that we have add a new card reader at the girls' entrance off of Corley's. That's the entrance in between, kind of right in between the building, at the corners of the building. We're working with our vendor to have that new card installed. And we've also worked with food services as far as food delivery and keeping food hot and or cold, and having the appropriate equipment so that we can keep our food at proper temperature. So think of it really kind of like the bag the Domino's driver used to bring the pizza in. It's a thermos bag, and it keeps things hot and cold. We've had our HVAC engineers walking through the buildings. They still have to finish at Hutchinson School, we learned today. We are looking forward to getting that final report. But we've walked through all the buildings with all of our with our teacher representatives. We've walked significantly through the buildings to just review and look at the ventilation and see that it is functioning throughout our buildings. Certainly things can break, and things do break, and we fix them. And then that's how these things work. If everybody has a house, we know things break and we fix them, and then something else can go down. But we're working to make sure everything works as it's designed. Lastly, I'm going to save this for last intentionally. We did have our tent bid. We talked significantly about this. We did put out a bid, working with the architect and a site plan. We put out a bid. We distributed to 5 different tent vendors. Our expected cost or quote was approximately about $125,000 for these tents, which would be in place for September through January 1st. We received 1 bid back, which was not from the original vendor we were working with. The bid came in 6 times higher than the expected price. Again, the expected price was about $125,000. When we put in the pricing that was bid, it looks to be around $750,000 for these 20 tents. So with that, we've looked to try to pivot. We've looked to smaller size tents, the smaller pop-up size tents. So we're working to make sure that we've got sufficient square footage or equal square footage covered in those sizes. We've received those tents, and we've got them distributed already at our elementary schools. And we're waiting for the remainder to be delivered, if they have not yet already been delivered, at our middle school and high school. So certainly a disappointment when I talked to the tent vendor. There was the one who submitted the bid. Some of the things I heard was he can't even get aluminum for the poles for the tents. He's having difficulty securing material to make the tents. They are all basically rented out. They're very busy. There's high demand. One of the larger companies, Albertsons, went out of business, or they recently retired. So the market or the number of vendors have closed, and this particular gentleman who I spoke to said he bought most of their product and has already rented it out. So when we looked at that, we tried to see what happened, or what exactly happened. And with the bid process, it was very obvious, in the respects that there's a lot of demand out there for tents right now. All the same, we did share his information with our architect to see and asked them to call him to see if there's any way they can come up with different dimensions that perhaps may be much more affordable. But I mean, again, we're kind of between the $125,000 that we had estimated and and at the 750. So that's just a difficult gap right now to work with. That's why I think all the same, using the stopgap that we have here gives us equal coverage using the smaller sizes. So I think that's what I've got, and I can certainly, hopefully, if you have any questions, see if I can help you out.
I wanted to add just a few more items that certainly transition from Jim's into a couple others. We, as Jim mentioned, we didn't get the tents that we had originally planned, but we have procured some 10 by 10 tents for the campuses. And we've got, I think a number of those have already been distributed out to the elementary schools, and we're getting the remaining shipment later this week. So we will still have some sort of tent options. Also, one of the pieces of feedback we received through the planning process, which it was a very logical recommendation. So John Sabalos is helping us to try to spec out and improve our internet service outside of the schools. So in areas where we think we may have the tents, to also then be able to have a wireless access point at each school, so that teachers, if they have their class outside or if students are outside, might be able to access internet from outside as well, in a place that hopefully will correspond to a degree with tents, so that even in inclement weather, they have some outdoor access to that. The other two pieces that I wanted to mention relate to technology and to supply chain issues. The board may remember we did mention a while back with Chromebooks. Certainly John Sabalos reconfigured his budget and distribution of replenishment of devices, so that in last year we had enough devices for grades 6 through 12. Sixth grade was classroom based. 7 through 12 was a one-to-one Chromebook program. When the closure happened, we shifted those sixth grade devices home. So now we have a 6 through 12 one-to-one program, and we still had classroom-based devices and loaned them out as needed at the elementary. John reworked his budget for this year so that we could expand the supply down through third grade. But we are running into supply chain issues at this point in time. So we do have enough devices on campus for our 6th through 12th graders. Our 7th through 12 still had them from last year. So we'll be distributing devices to the 6th graders at the start of this school year. But at the elementary level, the shipment, unfortunately, originally we thought it was going to be coming mid-September. Now it's scheduled to come closer to the start of October. So that is going to present some challenges for us at the elementary level. So we will be putting out a survey tomorrow to try to get a better prioritized response from parents. We did put out a survey, I think it was about 2 weeks ago, asking folks if they had additional needs at the elementary level for additional devices, given, whether it's multiple children at home, not having a device, or, only having maybe a parent's work device. But we need to prioritize, because at the moment we do not have the inventory to provide to all 3 through 5. So that was something we wanted to make the board aware of. We're in better positions than other districts, I have to say. John Sabalos, again, was really forward thinking. Beginning of the summer, we had put in an order for Dells, and he found out quickly that those were back ordered through December. So he shifted to a different model, to the Acers, which then we were one of the first districts to do that, was supposed to get here early September. I think he said there was 20 districts really in the same boat. And unfortunately, that's just gotten delayed now a few weeks out. So we're better than the folks who are waiting till now January for their devices, even though it's going to put us in a tough spot for a few weeks. But we will hopefully prioritize and do our best to meet the needs of the elementary parents. And then the other piece that, and this is actually BOCES notified us of this recently. We contract for our internet, the pipe, the actual internet capacity through the LYRIC, the Lower Hudson Regional Information Center, which is a subset of our local BOCES. And they informed all the districts, I think it's about 37 of us, that purchased through BOCES, that now that they have now that everyone's developed their plans, their hybrid and their remote learning plans, and they've contracted BOCES to get all their services in place for the school year, they are just about at capacity for their internet. Again, we upgraded back in June. As Jim said, our internal structure has been fully updated this year, new wireless access points, server points. So internally, the district is very well positioned to support the live streaming, whether it's hybrid or whether it's full remote that we've planned. But the problem now that we may run into, that we wanted to make the board aware of, and certainly the community, is that we, along with the other districts that purchase through Lyric, may experience interruptions, delays, or loss of service once everyone is back to school and starts to go through live streaming. We don't know that that's going to happen, but BOCES felt, given how close to capacity they are, they felt it was fair warning to let the districts know. And there's really no way to know until we know, until everybody logs on and tries to live stream at once. We don't know if it's going to hit that max capacity or not. They certainly have given districts some internet conservation strategies and asking everyone to employ those. We'll certainly do our part to the degree that we can. But again, just wanted folks to be aware. Right now, we have our plans in place. We were early on in putting those plans in place. But there is that potential that BOCES may not be able to handle the capacity. And I will say as well, Harold Coles is the director of our Southern Westchester BOCES, and he speaks regularly with the superintendents and with the other district superintendents of BOCES. This is not a Pelham problem. This is not a Westchester problem. This is a statewide problem, and it's actually a national problem, an infrastructure problem. We're not built statewide and nationally to really sustain this level of streaming that we're now going to expect to experience as of September 10th. So again, just want to be transparent about that and warn folks. Certainly, if that happens, we're going to do our best to pivot. And again, we're committed to trying to get our students to as much in-person instruction as we can. So we just ask for folks to be patient if we do experience problems. And we'll do our best to resolve them as quickly as we can. And if we can't get resolution through BOCES, then we'll have to pivot to a different plan until such time as we can. They do expect their supply issues to resolve by mid-September. So we're looking at potentially a week to 2 weeks where they're expecting us to run at max capacity through the local area.
Dr. Champ, when teachers come back into the classroom before teaching, starting on the 10th, will they be testing the live streaming to the extent that we can from the building?
Yeah, and Dr. Garcia may want to speak a little bit just to the plans. We've got 4 days of trainings established for the teachers, and a number of those sessions have to do with technology and learning the new devices.
Yeah, we do have several sessions which were actually offered to teachers the past 3 weeks, which were very well attended. Different types of applications we've never used before, like Pear Deck and Flipgrid. And John Sabalos and the teachers have been really great in turnkeying this training. It's going to be offered again to all the teachers during specified times throughout the 4 sessions. Also, there'll be Google Classroom training, there'll be camera training. So a lot of different applications which kind of came up to make the learning more interactive, especially in all remote experiences with kids. So that will be just part of the the 4-day session. I know Julie also has a number of social emotional trainings which are also going on during those days.
Thank you very much for letting us know about this potential concern. I think it's important for us to have the information and for the community to understand it. I know just from a little bit of Facebook looking that there seems to be a spirit amongst the community of really supporting each other, and everyone understanding that this year is going to be a day-by-day experiment. And so I think if people have this heads up that maybe there'll be a problem, maybe there won't be a problem, going into it with that kind of understanding that the teachers will be supported and we'll be supporting each other, that will help us all to get through the early days. And I think everyone is also very, very excited about going back into school.
Any other questions on those logistics?
Cheryl, I did have a question because I know this is something that came up in a bunch of the parent sessions. When you mentioned that John is working on getting some bandwidth outside, does that mean that teachers may be able to live stream, or just that kids could use their computers when they're in the tents?
I think it's going to depend on how much and how close they are to that source. The hope certainly is that it would be strong enough for teachers to live stream. I think one of the realities, and I think you'll see it especially at the secondary level, there's going to be certain classes and activities and thinking like physical education, music, things like that, that it may not make sense to live stream because of just the nature of the activities. We're not expecting a student at home to watch the live stream of, a pickleball game or something. I don't know what activities they're playing. But there's going to be a fair amount of asynchronous work. So if that's one thing that we will ask teachers, if they're going to be using outside, if they can live stream and it makes sense for the lesson to do it, but if not, to offer alternative activities so that students can be engaged, whether synchronously or asynchronously. But the hope is that we can have it out there, and as teachers make use of the outdoor space, whether it's for lessons, for mask breaks, for movement breaks, different activities, that they'd have that capacity. I think we'll see a lot of creativity come, I think, as people get into it and start to get space.
This is maybe a related but off-topic question. So I got to listen to a good portion of the Colonial Welcome Back meeting, and it was very informative and helpful. I know that they're doing that at a number of the schools, and that there's been great communication sent out about student parent handbooks and logistics. Are those sessions that the one I listened in on, is that being recorded? Is there a way to go back to those for parents who missed those sessions? Do you know?
I don't. I'd have to.
I think they are, Jessica. I actually accessed the Hutchinson one that way from the letter that Ms. Fitzgerald sent out to the whole student body for that school. And Alex might be able to answer that, Ivan, actually.
I believe that was the plan, but I do not know that they were definitely recorded because I just wasn't there. But I can circle back with the principals to make sure that if they were, that those recordings are available.
If they were recorded, it's fine. If they weren't, if they were recorded, it might be helpful in your next communication, Dr. Champ, just to mention that, because I felt like it was just so helpful. There were questions that came in, additional questions that you keep saying, direct them to your building principal, and Susan did such a great job answering them, and it really made me, even though I've listened in at the board level on all these calls and heard the logistics, but just sort of on a really practical nuts and bolts as a parent of students in a building, what this is going to look like. It really helped me better understand what it's going to look like. So, we're all busy and people are on vacation. So to the extent that people could find that somewhere, if it were recorded, it might be, people may have missed it. So
Sure. Yeah, we'll follow up for sure on that.
Hey, Cheryl, can you give the public any updates on athletics?
Great question. So really two different things. There was a press release issued today that pushed back the start of the winter season. And I think that was from the New York State organization. I don't remember off the top of my head what the date was, but I think that was in essence to align with the delayed start of the fall season. So they're trying to kind of back both of those in. I will say, as far as Section 1 and the fall season, there is definitely debate going on at the Section 1 level for our region. We're anticipating a decision by Section 1 to be released on Friday. I believe the way that the governor, certainly decided that the state could move ahead with opening athletics, but it was left to read to each section to determine how they wanted to handle that. So there has been significant discussion. The last survey that I checked looked at somewhere between 2/3 to 3/4 of superintendents expressed some concern with starting sports on time on that September 21st date. And I think a lot of that concern, certainly we all recognize the value that athletics have for our students. I think nobody doubts that whatsoever, in the relationship with coaches, the relationship with peers. and just the positive benefits of athletics. I think concerns are coming more out of logistics and health and safety. Logistics, when you think through the fact that each district has a different plan. Some are opening full remote, some are phasing in from full remote to hybrid, some are opening hybrid. Some schools were able to get the bulk of students in, but each district is different. So having an athletic season across all those different variables, if you've got schools that have students that are full remote, it's kind of a little bit contradictory to have students, they're not coming in to learn, but then we bring them in for sports. Or in a hybrid scenario, you have the complication of half the students are present at school, half are not. So how do you have something where only half of them are present, or do you then bring them in from remote to be in person? Then you've got mixing of cohorts. So there's a lot of logistical complications that come around it. And I think the other concern from a lot of districts is there's just so much in front of us right now, so many variables, as you've even heard tonight, and challenges that we're going to be dealing with day to day. So to add something more to that plate that could potentially, have health risks around it is of concern. So I know folks at the region, at the section level, are debating all of that and plan to come out with a section decision on Friday. So we'll definitely communicate that out to the community as soon as we hear about that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Another issue I did want to raise too is we continue to have folks concerned, and that's parents and staff, because we're at the end of summer, because it's time to bring children to college. It's the last hurrah before we come back to school. Significant concern about people traveling to states that have travel bans. And I can't stress enough, and we all know this because we all lived through being the epicenter of this. Our behavior affects the data. Our behavior directly impacts one another. So I have to just strongly urge everyone again, whether it's students or staff, if you have traveled to those states, you must adhere to that quarantine, the 14-day quarantine. Children will not be penalized attendance-wise or educationally. They'll be able to access their education remotely. Staff, the different variations of leave that are available out there. There is paid leave for people to quarantine, and certainly if somebody's healthy in quarantine, they will be able to teach from home. You cannot come in if you have been into one of those states and have not quarantined for the full 14 days. I know at this point we're beyond that 14th day. So anyone who travels there as of now will miss those first few days, but it's just incredibly important. I don't mean to preach to the choir, but incredibly important that we all commit to adhering to that, to not coming to school if people are sick, not coming to school if people have a fever. We all have to really take that commitment to care for one another in that way. So please, if you've traveled and haven't done the 14 days, please do not send your child to school until you've completed those 14 days.
And that's one of the questions on the questionnaire that the students have to fill out each morning, correct?
Yes, and Julia, maybe I'll put you on the spot for a second too. We are all staff and students, and any visitors to the school will have to answer questionnaires when they come into the campus before they'll be allowed in each day. So Julia, can you highlight the questionnaire as well as the anticipated process for the start of school and long-term?
Sure. So the health questionnaire is going to be, the questions are going to be the same for whether it's a student or an adult. What's required is the adults have to answer the questions whether you've tested positive in the last 14 days, or if you've been around somebody who tested positive or has symptoms, if you've had fever, or if you currently have fever of over 100 degrees, or if you have any of the symptoms. And then also if you've been to a state that is on the list for quarantine. So those are questions that you're going to have to answer yes or no to. If any of the adults, if any of the employees, check off yes to any of them, they really need to do this before they leave work, because they should not be coming to work, and they need to notify the supervisor. That'll be for the adults. For students, the same questions. We did sign a contract with an app called Easy Screen. Right now, we should, this week, we're going to get additional information about how to sign everybody up. So we're going to have that app. But just in case, if that app is not ready for next week, we're certainly going to use the paper version to start, but we will at some point have an app where the parents will be able to do this every night. I'm working with Alex to see if we can send out some sort of a communication to the parents every night, just to remind everyone to take the temperature, answer the questionnaire, so that the next morning students can come to school with an app to be able to show if a student has a phone, or they can use a paper copy and bring us a proof that the parent has done all those things and have attested to the fact that the student doesn't exhibit any of the symptoms. So that's kind of that is what we're working on right now.
Yeah.
I know that there were a couple of parents that asked a question to the principals regarding possibly the parent going to a state and returning, and if the family had to quarantine if the student cannot come back. And the latest direction from DOH back in August 10th is that if the parents have gone to a state, the student didn't go and the student was here, the student actually can come to school as long as the household remains asymptomatic and does not test positive for COVID. So there are a lot of different situations. So please, if there's a question, I think in the, I did put together a couple of flow charts so that everybody kind of has the same understanding of what the expectation is. And I believe that is part of the parent handbook that got sent out. So please look through that. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, and I'll be happy to, go through your personal scenario and answer your questions.
Along those lines, Julia, I remember when the DOH guidelines came out, reading through them, and we've reviewed them, with the parent sessions. And I've been away, but keeping up with the news, it seems the CDC has made some adjustments to the recommendations on who should get tested versus not. Will the DOH be making adjustments based on the recommendations based on that, or what will we be following?
I go with whatever the latest DOH I guess changes come through Dr. Champ. I don't think we've seen any changes. We still have the same expectations of the quarantine, the 14 days, the 10-day isolation, what the expectation is when somebody is starting to show symptoms. So that's part of the flow chart that I put together.
Right.
I think the only difference that came about in the last, I think, maybe couple of weeks is that CDC had changed the 72-hour rule to a 24-hour rule if somebody is symptomatic and has fever. So that's the only change. But outside of that, there really hasn't been any changes since beginning of August, as far as I know. Yeah.
The headlines are all reading, CDC's recommending less people get tested and, only in certain. Yeah, I don't know if the headlines are misleading, but we follow DOH
Yeah.
is
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and Julia, I don't know if you know this off the top of your head, you may, just the protocol for a reentry of a student back into school. If they were sent home sick with them, showing symptoms.
Right. So they need to see a physician. They need to get clearance from the physician. They need to also, so it depends. So if the student is diagnosed with something else other than COVID, then obviously the physician will write a letter, and so the student can come back. If the student tests negative, then we've got to make sure that all the symptoms are gone, and then they can come back. If the parent calls the physician and the physician or the healthcare provider says, you should get tested, or based on those symptoms, I believe you may be positive, then you do have to quarantine for 10 days. And we have to wait until the fever goes down and all of the symptoms have gone away. So the specific number of days, it's in the chart. I can look for it right now, but just that's kind of the, yeah.
So I just think, yeah, and I figured there's so many different iterations, but that's where it's going to be really important to work with each school's nurse, and certainly Julia as our district COVID coordinator, because each situation may be slightly different, but we do need clearance from doctors in each of the variations in order for students to return to school. So that's just important for folks to know. And if they don't have a family doctor, Julia, is there a resource through the school?
They can certainly reach out to the school nurse, and then we'll support parents from there.
So I guess the only other one piece I would add, and I only add this because other districts I know are struggling with this. Certainly, we as staff could have potential reasons to, to be of concern coming back, whether it's health or childcare. And again, we're very fortunate in that we're not seeing a significant amount of that, whereas some other districts have. So we're really appreciative to our teachers, again, for their commitment, and our administrators, their commitment, their desire to come back and to teach and to be in the classroom. So we're working through each of those case by case and doing the best we can to make sure that folks are taken care of, safe, healthy, and able to do their work. So just wanted to point that out to the board as well.
Can you speak to the process for looking for permanent subs? I know that might be like the linchpin to keep the system going, given all the variables in terms of teachers being out and, childcare leaves popping up and whatnot. And also I had some people reach out to me saying that they might be interested. What are the criteria for being a permanent sub? And are we only looking for permanent subs?
Dr. Garcia, you want to take that one?
Sure. Permanent subs need to be certified teachers in New York State, because then they can work past 40 days. So that's criteria number one. And criteria number two to be a teacher, you really, at this point, most districts, they have to have a high school diploma. So just to be a daily sub. But really, at times we want people who are billing subs who actually can perform duties of teachers at times. So that's how the setup is this year, to try to ensure that, when a teacher may be out or maybe out for a day or two, that they can fill in those shoes. So that's why we're earmarking, at least we would like to have, in the best case scenario, 2 building subs per school.
So that we're envisioning that, normally just the way the system works, if a teacher's out sick, they call into ASOP as our substitute system, and that that place automatically places a daily sub in there, as Dr. Garcia mentioned. But we're this year supplementing with those 2 building subs that would basically automatically show up at the school. Principal would prioritize and place them where the greatest need is. So if a position wasn't filled by a daily sub or something else came up last minute, they've got an extra set of hands to fill in, because we know that there's going to be gaps on a regular basis.
And also, we posted the building sub positions on OLAS, but if there is a parent who would like to actually just sub for us day to day, or to be on that list, they just send a quick email to my secretary, Patricia Madden, Madden at pelhamschools.org, or just call our offices, and we'll have you go through an interview and meet with you, and then see how it goes.
And we're still hiring monitors, as Jim said earlier, substitute teachers, monitors, $19 an hour for monitors. Again, looking for folks who just want to work with kids. Can give us some time.
Thank you so much. Does anybody else have any questions or comments? Well, thank you for everybody for all of your time on this. Keep thanking everybody, but I just know it's like every time you try and put your pen down, I'm sure there's another something to write or another email to respond to. So I know it's been a lot of work, but it's very evident that we're in a great spot. I think as great as we can be. You keep saying there's no easy answers, and there are not. And nothing's gonna be perfect, and it's not gonna be perfect for everybody all the time. But I think flexibility and open mind and an openness to feedback on Wednesday night are kind of going to be the key factors. Patience. Keep saying I need to take a collective deep breath. We all do. But we're going to get to this.
I have one question.
Sure.
I'm really glad we had this session tonight, so we can keep everybody informed as to, the sort of day by day changes or day by day developments. We still have over a week to go before we're actually starting classes. So, is there a plan to update the public again if there's further developments?
We certainly could do that. Our hope was tonight, assuming the board is comfortable with moving ahead with hybrid model, that we were going to put out an announcement tomorrow about that summarizing. And then I think these, these first superintendent's conference days, these are going to really help us to know capacity as far as internet capacity, staff comfort level, those sorts of things. Certainly if something changes, we would definitely come out and let folks know as soon as that happens. Prior to that, my guess is we would send just another reaffirmation of the start of school with any last minute updates, tweaks, changes. I would anticipate that, they right before the start of school, sometime, not this week, but next week.
I think that would be great. You did it, when we were in the crises in March and April, you sent out regular updates, which not saying we should do it as often as we did.
Daily.
Yeah.
Thank
not
you.
suggesting that, but I think things are constantly in flux. So just to reassure people that we're still on track, we're still, things are still copacetic. There hasn't been any major changes, or if there has, then what are they?
Right.
So I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, we can definitely do that.
One other thing, Dr. Champ, is with respect to the schedules. I know that people know which cohort they're in and they know generally what's happening, but will there be a schedule that people can access? Like, the first 2 days of school are going to be a little bit different, and then which weeks trigger the Wednesday or don't? Is there going to be some place to look for that?
Yeah, Alex, would you actually speak to that?
Happy to speak to that. So each of the cohort calendars have been posted to the district website. They're available right now. They are posted as separate calendars, and I point that out because what that means is parents can actually go to those calendars if you visit our reopening plans page on the website, and you can sync those calendars right to your device or your computer, your Google Calendar, any of that, so you know exactly which day. The district calendar is also posted, which has the noon dismissals for the hybrid model. So those are all out there and publicly available as well. And then the last piece of the calendar item is the individual schools, which should be posted tomorrow, is my hope. So that should all be available for everybody, and we will include that in our communication so folks know to look for them as well.
That's a good point, Eileen. I think I read in great detail to the middle school email that came to my students, and that's how I found those links, which was really easy. I encourage all parents to sync up their calendars as we normally do with the district calendars, but it's helpful. It just states exactly what days your kids will be in school. But it would be helpful. I think those first couple of days in particular are a little bit confusing and a little different. The first week or so of school is going to be a little bit different. And September is always a little different because of the holidays. So to the extent that building principals can, in their weekly updates, be emailing parents and reminding them of some of the nuances. There's a lot of new details here, so I think we shouldn't take it for granted, any of it. So.
Definitely.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much. So, go back to my agenda. I think this is you, Eileen.
Madam President.
So moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thanks, John. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thanks so much. Have a good night,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Good night.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.